In the royal palace of ancient Joseon, there was a place called the Bureau of Tailors, dedicated to making clothes for the royal family. Within its walls, a dramatic story once unfolded. Among the tailors was the most authoritative craftsman, the royal needle master, named Jo Du-seok. His skill in making clothes was unmatched, and as the royal needle master, he only made garments for the king and queen. 3 years had passed since the previous king's death, and Jo Du-seok was summoned to the palace to make the new king's royal robe. The king was extremely pleased with the robe, and as a reward promised Jo Du-seok a position among the court officials in a year, making him a 6th-rank noble. Overjoyed, Jo Du-seok had already prepared the official attire he would wear for his new role. One day, the queen asked Jo Du-seok to prepare a ceremonial robe that the king would wear at an important ritual. However, a maid dozing off accidentally knocked over a candle, burning the hem of the robe to tatters. With the ceremony imminent, the queen urged Jo Du-seok to repair it quickly, but he said it would take several days at the fastest. At this moment, an official suggested a solution. He knew someone who could finish the repair in the shortest time. This person was Lee Gongjin, a tailor working in a brothel. Though born lowly, Gongjin was called a genius by the courtesans for his unique and imaginative designs, full of bold and fashionable elements ahead of their time. When officials complained their robes were too conservative and cumbersome, Gongjin would alter the sleeves and trim the hems, making them instantly lighter and more agile. For the courtesans, he designed split pants and revealing underskirts. Summoned to the palace, Gongjin was instantly smitten upon seeing the queen and promised to finish the repair overnight. He immediately set to work, sketching and sewing, and by morning the robe was done. The king, upon wearing it, praised its fit and comfort, rewarding Gongjin generously. Even the queen gave him pastries and wine. It was the first time Gongjin had spoken with the queen up close, and he found her not only beautiful and gracious, but also exceptionally intelligent and insightful. Gongjin's straightforward nature quickly amused the queen. Afterwards, the king asked Gongjin to design hunting attire for him. Though Gongjin preferred a free life and was reluctant to stay in the palace, the queen gifted him a phoenix hairpin, suggesting he give it to the woman he liked. Looking at the hairpin, Gongjin changed his mind. If he could see the woman he liked often, what did it matter if he stayed in the palace? Thus, Gongjin entered the palace a second time. Jo Du-seok believed royal attire should follow tradition and be made according to established patterns. But Gongjin drew entirely new designs for the hunting outfit, altering the cuffs, waistline, and hem. Despite their differences, the two tailors, both exceptionally talented, soon became confidants. Under the moonlight, they shared their thoughts, with Jo Du-seok discussing the official robe he was designing for himself, and Gongjin imagining an even better one for him, promising to make it when Jo Du-seok became a noble. Meanwhile, the king wore Gongjin's hunting outfit and praised his craftsmanship, asking him to continue making clothes for the royal family. But Gongjin's thoughts were all about the queen. Even the clouds in the sky seemed to take her shape. He decided to make a dress for her, which turned out to be both exquisite and dignified, earning praise from all the palace women. Not satisfied with just one, Gongjin made a second, even more fashionable dress for the queen, which even Jo Du-seok admired and helped embroider. Together, they created a perfect garment. Sitting in the indigo dye house, they closed their eyes, savoring the scent of dye and the sound of the wind among fluttering fabrics, cherishing their rare friendship, unaware that this happiness was about to end, and their fates would be forever changed by these beautiful clothes. One day, the queen asked Gongjin to teach her how to make clothes as a return gift for the king, who had given her a new dress. Gongjin suggested she make the king some underwear, which might improve their relationship. Though embarrassed, the queen agreed, and Gongjin taught her every detail, stitch by stitch. During the lesson, the queen mentioned she had learned needlework from her late mother, and as both her parents had died young, she rarely had the chance to visit their graves. Seeing her sadness, Gongjin resolved to take her out of the palace to pay respects. Before leaving, he made special clothes for the queen and her maid. Wearing these beautiful garments, Gongjin led the queen out of the palace to her parents' grave, covered in blooming redbud flowers. Seeing the queen weep, Gongjin was deeply moved. But good times didn't last. The king took a new concubine, the daughter of the Minister of War, causing much gossip in the palace. Rumors spread that the queen was still a virgin, and her position as Queen Mother could be replaced at any time by Lady Sohee. The ambitious Minister of War demanded Zhou Duseok design a dress for his daughter's investiture ceremony. Though Zhou Duseok insisted he only made clothes for the king and queen, the minister retorted that his daughter could soon be queen. Realizing the situation, Zhou Duseok complied and made a lavish dress for Lady Sohee. However, on the day of the ceremony, the queen arranged for no one to welcome Sohee, making the event embarrassingly sparse. That night, though the king was supposed to visit Sohee, he knew she was just a political pawn. 3 years ago, he had been pushed onto the throne by the ministers, but never held real power, always constrained by powerful officials. Now the Minister of War sought to use his daughter to coerce the king. The king refused to let him succeed, but Sohee was not easy to deal with. When the king didn't visit her, she boldly went to the main hall in her underwear, stripping off her clothes in front of him. The next morning, the queen brought the underwear she had made for the king, only to see Sohee's shoes at the door, and left in disappointment. No matter how beautiful her clothes, she could not win the king's heart. Seeing the queen's sorrow, Gongjin took her boating, but the beautiful scenery only reminded her of sad memories. 3 years ago, when she first entered the palace, she and the then-crowned prince were in love, and being by his side was her lifelong dream. But suddenly the king became cold and distant. As she spoke, the queen wept, and Gongjin, unsure how to comfort her, handed her a handkerchief embroidered with red bud flowers to wipe her tears. After boating, it began to rain as if the heavens were weeping for the queen. Gongjin couldn't understand why the king neglected such a noble and beautiful queen. An official who had first introduced Gongjin to the palace revealed the king and queen's past. Years ago, the current king was just one of many princes. The late king wanted to choose a wife for the crown prince, but one of the candidates and the prince fell for each other. The crown prince, noticing this, deliberately let the queen lose the selection, then pretended to be generous by marrying her to his brother. The proud king could not accept that the woman he loved was given to him as charity by his brother, so he began to distance himself from her after their wedding night. With the queen out of favor and Sohee vying for attention, ministers plotted to depose the queen and replace her with Sohee. Hearing this, Gongjin vowed to help the queen. He sought advice from the top courtesan at the brothel on how she maintained her position despite her age. She explained that men always preferred younger, prettier girls, so she would offer them to the men, ensuring all the girls had to obey her to gain favor. Inspired, Gongjin selected a pretty young palace maid, designed her a beautiful dress, and as expected, the king noticed her. After spending a night with the king, the maid quickly rose in status, and other maids lined up at Gongjin's door, trading jewelry for dresses, all hoping for the king's favor. Soon the palace was filled with women competing in new and beautiful clothes, and the trend spread outside the palace, with common women imitating the palace styles, even wearing dresses like the queen's. Some women approached Zhou Duseok, hoping he would make them dresses like the queen's, but he refused, prompting ridicule that he simply couldn't do it. The women then went to Gongjin instead, wounding Zhou Duseok's pride. Now rumors spread that Gongjin was a genius hanbok designer, leaving Zhou Duseok, the king's tailor, feeling insignificant. Meanwhile, palace officials petitioned the king, complaining that women inside and outside the palace were disregarding propriety, wearing indecent and extravagant clothes, corrupting morals and customs. Soon Qing envoys would visit Joseon, and such rumors would disgrace the kingdom. After 2 invasions by the Qing, Joseon had become a vassal state, and even the king had to kneel before the Qing emperor. Though the king resented this, he had no choice but to comply. For the dignity of the royal family, he ordered Zhou Duseok to restore order in the Bureau of Tailors. Torn between the king's orders and his jealousy of Gongjin's talent, Zhou Duseok ordered all of Gongjin's designs in the bureau to be burned. Watching his creations go up in flames, Gongjin was heartbroken but could only leave the palace quietly. As the day of the Qing envoy's visit approached, the rules dictated that if the king had no heir, he would not be recognized as king. Yet the king and queen had never consummated their marriage, threatening the king's legitimacy. Ministers again advised that the queen's position be given to Sohee at the upcoming celebration. The king was displeased but helpless, a king in name only, controlled by others. With the king's reluctant approval, So he immediately asked Zhou Dushok to make her a dress, determined to be the most beautiful woman at the celebration. An official informed Gongjin that the queen, disheartened, did not plan to attend the ceremony. Gongjin rushed back to the palace, persuading the queen to attend and not give up her position. He promised to make her the most stunning dress, making her the center of attention. The queen agreed, and Gongjin personally took her measurements, bringing them closer than ever before, with unspoken feelings lingering in the air. Both Zhou Duseok and Gongjin poured their efforts into designing the perfect dress. Zhou Duseok to preserve his honor, Gongjin to protect the queen's status. Yet the harder they tried for perfection, the more elusive it became. Both struggled to create a satisfactory design until Zhou Duseok discovered Gongjin's sketches, each one beautiful. Unable to resist, he stole them, combined them with his own ideas, and created a purple gold ceremonial dress. At the celebration, Sohee wore the purple gold dress and immediately became the center of attention, even impressing the Qing envoys. Just as Sohee was about to take the queen's seat, Gongjin burst in, determined to defend the queen's position. The queen appeared in a moon-white gown adorned with pearls, with pleated sleeves resembling opened oysters, and a long skirt trailing on the floor, exuding beauty and nobility, topped with a golden phoenix hairpin. Even the Qing envoys bowed in admiration. Compared to the queen's regal attire, Sohee looked ordinary. The queen's appearance restored her status, and the celebration ended with her firmly in place. Afterwards, Sohee angrily tore off her dress, mocking Zhou Duseok's reputation as the top tailor. But in truth, Zhou Duseok was the most frustrated. Gongjin, a mere commoner with no formal training, had created a dress even he, the best tailor in the land, could not match. Jealousy consumed him. Yet Gongjin cared nothing for fame. He was saying farewell to the queen, knowing they belonged to different worlds and could never be together. The time spent with her was enough for him. The queen was moved by his words, but before she could respond, the king arrived. Having been pleased by the queen's performance at the celebration, the king intended to visit her that night, but upon seeing her alone with Gongjin, he immediately suspected an affair and left in anger. Sohee further fueled his suspicions, claiming to have heard rumors of the queen and Gongjin leaving the palace together and Gongjin personally measuring her. The king, consumed by jealousy, wondered if anything in the palace truly belonged to him. He decided to kill Gongjin, ordering Zhou Duseok to sew a poisoned needle into a royal robe using Gongjin's technique, framing him for the crime. Zhou Duseok, eager for this outcome, complied. Everything went according to plan. The poisoned needle was found, and though the queen pleaded for Gongjin, the king accused them of having an affair. Gongjin took all the blame, claiming he had seduced the queen without her knowledge, sparing her from punishment. Afterwards, Gongjin was thrown into prison, fulfilling Zhou Duseok's wish. Yet Zhou Duseok felt empty and lonely, recalling his time with Gongjin and his own childhood struggles to master tailoring. He realized Gongjin was his only true friend. Zhou Duseok visited Gongjin in prison, touching his rough hands, lamenting that it was these clothes that had torn their friendship apart. But Gongjin insisted the problem was not the clothes, but Zhou Duseok's cowardice, having already guessed he was framed. Zhou Duseok, both sad and angry, confessed he had only wanted to change his lowly fate, and just as he was about to become a noble, Gongjin's arrival threatened everything he had worked for. Gongjin remained silent, and Zhou Duseok left in despair. The next day, Gongjin was led to the execution platform, exchanging a final look with Zhou Duseok in the crowd. With no last words, Gongjin looked up at the sky, smiling peacefully as he accepted death. After his death, the queen ordered all the clothes Gongjin had made for her to be buried. Alone, she wept bitterly, with only the embroidered red bud handkerchief silently witnessing her feelings for Gongjin. Not long after, Zhou Duseok was granted the 6th rank official position he had long desired, finally becoming a noble. Yet his expression was complex, as if smiling and crying at the same time. He went to Gongjin's room and burned all his clothes, but one garment caught his eye, a pale green robe with wide sleeves, a bell, and a green ribbon at the waist. He remembered this was the official robe Gongjin had promised to make for him upon becoming a noble, and Gongjin had even said his design was better. Unexpectedly, Gongjin had actually made it. Holding the robe, Zhou Dexiuc broke down in tears, regretting that he had driven away his only friend. Outside, snow fell silently, mourning the sorrowful past. After becoming a noble, Zhou Dexiuc wore the robe Gongjin had made for him, waiting at home for the king's summons. But the king never came. Only crowds in colorful clothes filled the bustling streets, as if nothing had changed. The film uses the unique perspective of tailoring to tell a tragic story of an era. Every character in the story is powerless over their own fate. The king, though seemingly at the top, was suppressed by the late king and his brother, manipulated by ministers, and oppressed by the Qing court. He appeared powerful, but had no real authority or freedom. Though he once loved the queen, power amplified his pride, and love was ultimately defeated by his fragile dignity. In the end, he was the most pitiable person, dressed in splendid robes. The queen, unmatched in beauty and talent, could not win the king's love and had to suppress her feelings for Gongjin, ending up with nothing but the queen's throne. Zhou Dexiuc represented countless people from humble backgrounds striving to break through class barriers. He worked tirelessly to become a noble through his unparalleled needlework, hoping to change his fate. He and Gongjin were both friends and rivals, but fate was cruel. Why must there be both a Yu and a Liang? In contrast, Gongjin was an outlier, refusing to conform to tradition, daring to turn skirts into pants in a feudal society, showing how advanced his thinking was. Yet even he could only retreat in the face of class-divided love, and his only end was death. As a genius designer, his scissors could cut fabric but not the human heart, nor could they change the times. This is a sorrowful epic trapped in beautiful garments. Yet as time passes, all power struggles and love-hate entanglements fade away. When the royal robes are removed, all that remains is a faded, once beautiful dress, bearing silent witness to everything that has passed. The film ends here. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and follow for more daily movie reviews. See you next time.